Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to the History Squad. Now we're on location in South Wales, Monmouthshire to be precise, and this is the White Castle. White Castle was originally established by the Normans in the late 11th century. It was likely commissioned by William Fitz-Osborne, a key ally of William the Conqueror. Later in the 13th century, a powerful royal official, Hubert de Burgh, improved the castle, adding curtain walls to the outer bailey as well as the great towers, pretty much as you see the outline of the castle today. So what we have is the gatehouse to the outer bailey, so you could call this the outer gatehouse. Now it's got a bailey built on the only piece of flat land outside of the castle, except for what's behind us, because there used to be an other bailey just behind us here. This was to house the tents, that kind of thing, for the armies that had to gather here to defend this area from the Welsh when they were in their uprisings. So before we go into the outer bailey, you see it's defended by a ditch. Now this would have been a lot deeper than it is now. Corner round towers, then a curtain wall, all that's been removed, it's been quarried, and now we would go into the gatehouse. And of course, there would have been the obligatory drawbridge. And there is still evidence here, as you come across. There's the stone piers where the drawbridge closed onto. So the drawbridge would actually close down and rest on that pier just there, that stone pier. But when it was raised, you can actually see just here, this is the extent of the gap they would have to come across. And the drawbridge, as it comes up, the tail end of it would actually go into the sump, into this great big gap underneath, which you can see. And it is quite deep. You can see how far it extends all the way back to just here. So when the drawbridge pivots, it comes up and then is dropped into the enormous pit just there. So amazingly, once the drawbridge was actually closed against the enemy, you have the gap there that they've got to get across. But if they smashed through the drawbridge, if ever they could do such a terrible thing, there is the pit here that they've got to get across as well. And then just behind it, you have a groove here and a groove there. That is for the portcullis. And behind the portcullis, there would have been the castle doors. And here is your massive putlug hole, where they ram from the other side this great big wooden beam that locks in on this side. So, front door, and we're not even anywhere near the castle. In the rest of this building, you've got a bit of a guard room. You've got an arrow slit looking down into the ditch. So this is quite a defensive piece. And there was rooms upstairs as well, because you've got the windings and everything for the portcullis and for the drawbridges. But there's an extra piece to this. Let me show you. There was another door here. I can't find any evidence for there was another portcullis, but what kind of throws me a little bit, the door is the wrong way around. As you can see, the door jamb is on the wrong side, and so is the putlug, that great big hole there to push the beam through. It locks the door from this side, from inside the gatehouse. So hang on a second, I've got it. This could seal, this gatehouse could be sealed against people coming that way, and if they got over the walls, coming in this way, because the door jamb is there and the putlug is on the back of it. So that's an interesting point, isn't it? You can lock the door against the people who are attacking you from behind. Hey, I like this place. And there you have the stairs going up. But up no longer exists. So we're in the outer bailey now. We've got through the gatehouse. There were buildings all the way along there. You know, wooden buildings, that kind of thing. There would have also been tents, marquees in here when there was a visiting army. But there is something that I've not seen anywhere else with regards to the arrow slits. And I'm going to walk you over to the corner here and have a look at one of the arrow slits from the inside. So this is one of your round towers, obviously a lot higher, and there would have been a wooden back on it. So we go in the door. We're in the cellar part, but if you come up, have a look at the arrow slits. Just see if you can spot what's different about them they are uneven. Instead of there being an arrow cross, one left side is higher than the right side, and it's slightly bigger as well. We have a much better example of the off-centered arrow slit here. Now, I believe that the reason of that shape is you can get two men to shoot out of it at the same time. It also gives you a better angle to shoot from. But if you know any different, please get in touch, let me know, because every day is a school day, isn't it? But that's what I reckon. They're off-centered so that two different men could actually shoot through them, which is important in the day of the crossbow. These are for crossbows, really, not for longbows. You know, White Castle, it really is your archetypal medieval castle, isn't it? With its round towers, so you haven't got any blind spots. Your square towers give you blind spots. And if you look at that tower halfway down on the outside there, you can see the arrow slit just above ground level. So anybody coming up the mound there, they're going to get chopped. But brilliantly, you've got such a deep ditch, and at the bottom, you have a deep water moat. So the actual castle itself, it's protected not just by a ditch but by a deep water moat and all of these round towers. And of course they would have all had battlements on top of it, which have been removed over the years. So I'm eager to go inside to have a look at just what kind of drawbridge would they have had here. So follow me. So the way the drawbridge worked here was similar to other castles. It closed down to about here, but there's nothing left of the supports or anything to show us exactly where it went. The rest of it would have been a wooden bridge. Now, in times of being attacked, if the enemy were really threatening, that bridge can be destroyed, dropped down. Then the drawbridge can literally be raised, closed up, but we're missing all of the parts that it used to belong to, you know. Where's it all gone? But here, there is just some of the evidence left where the portcullis used to run. In fact, there is the portcullis groove. Down it comes. So the portcullis closed off here. So you have to assume that the drawbridge was hinged up. It wasn't on weights. It must have been literally winched up. And then behind it, you have two enormous put lugs to be rammed across to lock the door, which must have stood here. So now this is the entrance into the inner bailey. The gatehouse, we have the drawbridge, we have the portcullis, we have a door here, and I've just been looking and I found a little bit more evidence. There's a massive put lug here, a massive beam that comes across. So there was a second door here. I can't see if there was any portcullis, but I can see there must have been an enormous door. And judging by the size of that hole just there, the beam would have stretched right the way across, and it would have stopped anybody trying to batter it down. Well, for a little time anyhow. But we're going to have a look in the guard room. So we're just inside one of the gatehouse towers. There's not much to see at the bottom, but as you come up, there's some plaster still on the wall. So is this part of the original plaster of the castle? Because you do find it now and again. But this is the remains of a staircase. Nice little spiral staircase. And there's the remains of another one coming down in the other direction. So you've got these very narrow stairways, just wide enough for one person to go up, one person to come down. And then if you look over yonder, you can see there are two fireplaces. So this dark, dismal tower, defensive on the front there, was actually accommodation as well. And to your extreme right, you have your arrow loops. When you think about it and we go around these castles, it's literally like looking at a cross-section of a castle, a cross-section of history. I do love it. I do love coming to see these places. I've been haunting them for 67 years. How about that? Because I was about 3 when I was brought here. So we come out of the gatehouse into this incredible inner bailey. This is all part of the domestic range. Isn't it magnificent? Those walls, remember, they were a lot higher. But then I come round, I pop into the kitchen, but unfortunately there's not a lot left in here. However, in the next room along, it's brilliant. One of the most important parts of the castle. It's where they made the beer. So what we've got here is a bakery. Look at that for an oven. That's enormous, right? Everybody's bread could be baked in there, and some pies on the top, no doubt. But here you have where they malted the barley. So they would take barley which has been stored and sprouted, they would then dry it, and apparently they would then bake it up. I don't know how they did it, but I do understand they turned it into that most wonderful drink, ale, beer. But next we have a mural tower. Now a mural tower sticks out from the battlements, gives you a flanking view of the walls. And this really does show you how these towers, these round towers, worked. Because if you come and look just through here, that's a perfect example of the offset arrow slit, the ones we saw in the Outer Bailey. So there's one there, there's one literally opposite. So these are flanking arrow slits shooting along the walls. And then you have this one, which is quite something, this one, because you can shoot with your longbow from here down anybody trying to get across that ditch. But I don't like shooting out of these with a longbow. I'll tell you, the arrows often clatter. This is ideal for your crossbowman, and later on, of course, your handgunner and your musketeer. This is a great example. Now I see why they say that this is the best preserved of the three castles. Right, we're going to go into this mural tower, this corner tower, this tower that juts out. Right, now interestingly, I thought this was a modern cut through, but here we have a medieval doorway, and it has the holes here for the big lugs to lock the door in place. Now, I understood that the entranceway was up there, and there was a wooden steps up to it if you wanted to get into the accommodation upstairs. So maybe this is it. This is the soldier's bit. Here are 3 arrow slits, all aiming down into the moat. You can see the big beams that used to go across here to carry the floor upstairs. So that's the beginning of accommodation. So you've got ground, or let's say it's the basement, ground, first, second. So this is a 3-story tower with the battlements on the top. And of course, on the top, you would have had your machicolations as well. The battlements overbuilt with those wooden hoardings all the way around. So this is quite a thing, isn't it? But I wouldn't fancy living up there. You'll notice that there's no windows on this side. Not even arrow slits that I can see. So it would have been dark and dismal to live in that tower when you consider the only light coming through are from the narrow windows on the courtyard side. So let's carry on. Now, sometimes things don't quite make sense. This is the postern gate, the back way out of the castle. It must have been quite smaller than this, but I do understand there was a walkway of some kind over the moat. And what I learned is that this was the original entrance to the castle. But back in the 13th century, when Hubert de Burgh was strengthening White Castle, the whole of the castle defences were turned 180 degrees. And a new gatehouse was built facing onto the outer ward to prevent surprise attacks. Now what they found is these enormous footings. Look how thick these walls are here. This was an early medieval tower apparently, and it was buried. There was other buildings put in its place. So this castle has been built on and built over. It can be a little bit confusing. I'm hoping I'm making a little bit of sense. We're going to go into another tower. This is what's left of the chapel tower. So you imagine, I should imagine this is all part of the entrance way into this building. Once again, we have a defensive door, a door that can be shut. I reckon this is where the hinges were. There are 3 sets of them. So this is a lockable door, leads you into the military part of the tower, same as over yonder. So as you come in, you've got the storeroom here, or perhaps the military access, because there's a narrow loop there. And then you can see the ledge where the upstairs floor used to go. So wooden beams underneath, the floor above. There's a window for light as well as a narrow loop. But then there's that piece of stone jutting out. And that's what we call a piscina. That is where the priest would wash his sacred vessels, so I understand. So above us, the chapel, then above that, accommodation. It's interesting, I've just had a question asked, is how come there would be an arrow loop inside the chapel, you know, at this place of worship? First and foremost, the chapel is housed in a defensive tower. So you've got to have access to the arrow slits. They would have given you light anyhow. So where I'm standing now, we're in the constable's quarters. So there's a doorway through here into this room. There's his fireplace for his main room. But there's this bit here. What it actually is a latrine pit. The size of it suggests it was used for the whole garrison rather than for private occupants of the constable's quarters here. Waste fell into the deep shaft. Liquid waste would drain through the pit's non-waterproof walls, leaving solids behind for later disposal, when it would be emptied by the hired labourers called the gong farmer, who would then dry the poop, mix it with soil, and it would be used for fertiliser on the fields. Brilliant. It's great when you find these little things, isn't it? But we go just out through the constable's front door. Tip your hat to the constable. He's an important man, don't forget. And here we have the castle well. It's dark, it's dingy, but apparently there's water at the bottom of it. I don't fancy the idea of drinking that water though. It's a bit close to that latrine pit where the liquid waste could drain through the pit's non-waterproof walls. So there was lots of accommodation in this place. You had the rangers above them, the towers, the constable's accommodation. There would have been apartments above it, same here, and all the way along this range. But this building here was the Great Hall. So this would have gone really high, have its vaulted ceiling. But when they dug out the foundations, they found out, well, actually there was a building here before the other one. If you look, you can see there was originally a smaller, narrower footprint. Then just outside of that, it looks as though the foundations were extended to create a bigger Great Hall. And here at the one end, you'll see the remains of a stone-based hearth, which would help keep the hall warm in the winter months. This would have been where all of the food from over there that was made would have been eaten in here. And a lot of that ale would have been drunk too. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our tour of the White Castle. If you did, like, share and subscribe. And if you'd like to support our channel any further, why not have a look at joining our Patreon community? The link, it's in the description. But for now, bye. See you soon.